You're listening to 3 and 30 Takeaways for Moms, and I wanted to let you know that I've created a special downloadable resource for you to go along with this episode. If you want a list of the best books and podcasts for teaching kids financial literacy and responsibility, go to 3and30podcast.com/money. That's 3and30podcast.com/money for a downloadable list of today's podcast guests' favorite resources to help you teach your kids about money. Now let's get into the episode. Welcome to 3 and 30, a podcast to help you feel more like yourself within your motherhood. Each 30-minute episode features 3 actionable takeaways to help you become a more self-assured mom, someone who knows yourself, honors your needs, and loves your people. Listen in to feel encouraged as we learn together how to overcome overwhelm and find more magic in motherhood. I'm your host, Rachel Nielsen. I'm so glad you're here. Something that I think many parents have a lot of questions about, and maybe even some guilt about, is teaching kids about money. I know I have felt like I'm not doing enough in this area, but I've also wondered where I can get started with it all. Today on the podcast, I have a financial expert as my guest, and she's going to help us figure this out. My guest is Abby Chipman, and she's actually the finance director for 3 and 30. She joined my team last year, and I have been so inspired by her desire to make financial learning accessible for everyone, even our young kids. She recently taught a class about this topic at a retreat I had for the alumni of my Self-Assured Motherhood program, and the women loved it so much that I asked her to bring her 3 takeaways here so we could all learn from her. So with no further ado, here's my conversation with Abby Chipman. Abby, welcome to 3 and 30. I'm so excited to get to talk to you today.
I am so excited to be here. It's great to see you.
Well, as I just mentioned, you are a fairly new member of my team, and you've come on as the finance director just in the past year, and it's been an incredible help to me. And I was wondering, as we started, if you could tell us a little bit about how you realized that helping people understand money is really part of your life's purpose.
Sure. So I started the Self-Assured Motherhood program as a student before I ever was a part of the team. And that was really one of the big things that helped me to get there. I don't think I ever would have ended up working here if not for all of the things that I learned there. And in one section, we learn about pursuing your purpose. And there's an activity we do where we look at all of our life turns, like things where once you walk through that door, your life is never the same. And I kept on noticing this very consistent pattern of there was something about money, or me learning about money, or me teaching people about money that happened over and over and over. And a lot of people said, well, that's a very narrow purpose. Maybe you should broaden it out a little bit, but this is what fits me. That really helped me to see I love helping people with money. I love helping them to learn about it. I love helping them to realize this is something they can do. And that is what lights me up. And so that's really what got me going down that path, and what eventually led me to, reach out to you and see if there was any way I could help 3 and 30.
Yes, and I'm so grateful you did, because this is not my gift. So I love learning from you more about money. So tell me a little bit more about how did this show up for you throughout your life, like from childhood?
Oh, well, I mean, when I was a kid, when I was in 6th grade, I was the treasurer of my elementary school. So that was kind of, I guess, the beginning. I've always loved numbers. So that kept on coming up over and over and over. And I remember when I was growing up, my mom would make me get a credit card when I was in high school. And so she was really encouraging me to go down this route and to learn as much as I could about it. When I was in college, among all the classes I took a financial management course. And that wasn't my major. It was a separate thing. But that was the course that I walked away saying, that was the most useful thing I learned in college. So then later on, when I decided I was going to go back to grad school, I wanted to focus on that. So I ended up getting an MBA with a finance focus. And I just kept on going down that road. It just was a very natural progression.
And then when you became a mom, how did you continue to use that interest and focus even within a new season of your life?
Well, I loved looking for opportunities to volunteer. I loved looking for ways that I could share it with people.
Because you decided to be a stay-at-home mom, right?
Yes. Yes. After I had a career for a little while working in financial services. And then when my kids were born, I left just because I wanted to focus on raising my kids, but I didn't want to completely let go of this interest of mine. So like we lived near a neighborhood that had a boys and girls club. So we would teach them workshops about how to manage money and how to use a credit card and just all the little things that, maybe no one has taken the time to teach them. And then once my kids went to preschool, I got into the treasurer role there. So I've been managing money for them for the last 4 years.
And now you're back to doing it professionally,
And
working
here
for
I am.
me for
Yeah.
3 and 30. So I love that you're able to trace a pattern through your life of what you were drawn to, what interested you, what you're good at, and that it really does lead to a bigger purpose. And now you're going to teach us today whether or not we feel like we are competent with money. We are going to learn right alongside our kids because we're going to start talking to our kids and teaching our kids about money. And you have 3 takeaways for us of how we can do that. So let's get
Yep.
started with our first takeaway.
Okay, takeaway number one is to keep it fun. So you want to combine money with play so that your kids have this positive association as they're learning these general processes that they'll be using their whole lives with money. And there's really options for all different ages for this. With older kids, there's board games, there's Monopoly, there's the game of life. My kids right now are really into Cover Your Assets. They love this card
Mhm.
game. They don't even realize that they're learning about saving and investing. And if you're looking at younger kids, they can play with those little toy cash registers and the fake money. I have a 3-year-old and we will just give her a pile of coins and say stack them, or you can get a crayon and trace a circle around it, or try and sort them into the different colors and sizes. So you're just trying to give them an opportunity to get comfortable with it and to have positive feelings about it.
I love that. One thought that I had when you were talking, Abby, is that I think sometimes we as the adults need to make the money lessons a little bit more explicit when we're playing games because I don't know that my kids, like when we've played Monopoly, are really thinking about, or let's take the game of life. I might say to them, how much do you think it would cost to buy like that house in real life or to go back to college or whatever those different tiles are in the life game. So you're sort of not just playing the game, but also sort of bringing some of these lessons out explicitly, especially with older kids, to
Mm-hmm.
start these conversations about the different topics that in adulthood we're figuring out. We might as well start talking to our kids about that as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of nice to have that because if you're really not sure how to do it or where to start, the games kind of hand it to you. They
Hmm.
give you these opportunities that you probably wouldn't know how to bring up yourself.
Are there any podcasts that you use to teach your kids about this? I know you and I are both
Yes.
fans of podcasts.
Yes. So for older kids, I love the podcast Million Bazillion. If you
Mm.
ever listen to Marketplace, this is a podcast that they have created for kids. And they go over a lot of topics, but it's kind of in a way that's a little bit more entertaining. If you're looking at younger kids, my favorite is Elmo's Adventures in Spending, Saving, and Sharing.
Mm.
And yeah, so my 5-year-old eats that podcast up, and he has for a long time. So it's kind of an easy way to just, you know, to let them start learning about this stuff if you don't know where to start yourself.
Yeah, I love it. I need to learn probably a lot of the lessons in Elmo's Adventures. I would be learning too. So listen to some of this stuff with your family. Such a good idea to keep it fun. Let's take a quick break to thank this episode's sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by Little Stories, an app filled with original bedtime stories that feature your child as the main character. As I have heard from moms from all around the world over the years, a common pain point is bedtime. Whether you're dealing with a particularly anxious child at bedtime or juggling trying to tuck multiple children in who can't seem to stay put and wait for their turn, bedtime can be tricky. I'm so excited to introduce you to something that might help bedtime go more smoothly, and that's the Little Stories app. These sweet stories teach children how to be kind and courageous, how to help others, how to believe in themselves, and more. The stories truly are perfect for bedtime. They range from 4 to 8 minutes in length and include beautiful illustrations on each page. You can simply download the app, put in your child's name and age, and get reading. The personalized experience these books offer help your child learn even more as they are the main character of each story. And I love that Little Stories also includes a voiceover feature so you can record stories for your child to listen to in your own voice. So whenever you're not at home, your child can still enjoy listening to books with the comfort of a familiar voice, and the soft background music adds to the atmosphere of the story. To try out this brilliant app for families, simply download Little Stories from the App Store or Google Play and enjoy reading with your child. That's Little, Little, Stories, Stories, and download in the App Store or Google Play. This podcast is sponsored by Molly's Suds, laundry and household cleaning products made with safer ingredients. Moms carry the load of helping the whole family make the healthiest choices possible. We often think about what goes into our bodies, but it's also important to consider what goes on our bodies. A few weeks ago, my younger sister Laura came to visit, and she noticed my Molly's Suds laundry detergent and said she is a fan. Laura has severe eczema, and so do some of her kids. And after doing patch testing for skin allergies, Molly's Suds came up on the very short list of approved laundry detergents for her to use, because the ingredients are simple and safe for all skin types. I loved hearing this testimonial to back up a company that I am loving and using. I've been using a variety of Molly's Suds laundry products, the detergent pods and peppermint, and the unscented laundry powder. Clean powerfully and live fearlessly with Molly's Suds today. Pick up Molly's Suds on your next Target run or order through my exclusive URL to get 20% off all Molly's Suds products. To get this fantastic deal, go now to mollyssuds.com/3in30 and use code 3in30 at checkout. Again, for 20% off, go to mollyssuds.com/3in30 and use code 3in30 at checkout. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Today on the podcast, I'm talking with my incredible director of finance about kids and money. Teaching kids about money can feel overwhelming, and just like with other decisions we face in parenting, we often consider what others are doing as we try to make a decision. What are the experts online saying? Will my friends judge me if I have a different approach than them? Is there a right answer to all of these parenting questions? Meeting with a therapist has helped me to be a more confident mom, so I can make decisions for our family without worrying too much about what others think. If you're thinking of trying therapy, I suggest BetterHelp. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Start by filling out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. BetterHelp offers individual and couples therapy, as well as therapy for teenagers if you recognize that your child could use some support. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/3in30 today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/3in30. Okay, and then what's your second takeaway for us?
So my second takeaway is to let them learn by doing. And when I say this, what I'm really talking about is to pay your kids allowance. And this is going to look different for everyone. It's going to be different depending on your situation. You might have some personal values around it, or your family might have values around money. And even just the knowledge that you feel like you have, the comfort level that you have, those are all going to come into play when you're doing this. And I want to start with this saying you can start younger than you think. We start paying our kids allowance when they're 4. And by then they are ready because they've been watching their siblings get paid and use their money whenever we go places for years, and they want in. So the process looks different for them since they can't necessarily read or write yet, but they are ready to begin the practice.
I feel like allowances can feel like a little controversial. I feel like people have feelings about allowance. Have you worked through some of those, and what are your thoughts on allowance?
Yeah. Okay. This is a tricky one. I do have a lot of feelings about this, and it took me a while to get to a place that felt good for me about this, because I have always read that you should not tie your allowance to chores. Chores are something that we are supposed to do because we're all part of a family, and this is a contribution that we all make. And what happens if down the road your kid decides, you know what, you don't need to pay me? Are you not going to make them do chores anymore? Probably
Mm.
not, right? So don't set yourself up for that by making that tie. The way I came to terms with that is that I started to think about my values. So, one of my values is personal development. And I see learning about money as a really important key to personal development. And if I want my kids to learn about money, then I need to help them. If I want my kids to learn any other skill, what do? If I want them to learn to play piano, do I make them come up with their own piano? Do I hand them a book about playing piano and say, "Here you go, learn about playing piano"? No, they need a piano. So,
Mm.
what's the tool that kids need to learn how to use money?
It's
It's
money.
money. So, that's kind of how I made myself feel okay about it, you know? Like
Mm.
I don't like giving them money for nothing. I don't like the idea that they're learning that they can just get money for existing, but it is very important to me that this is a skill they learn.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I worked my way through that.
Something that helped me kind of find more peace with that is that I realized that I was spending money on them anyway. And some moms might not be as, I'm fairly lax. So like I would buy them a treat at the gas station or different things like that.
Mhm.
And so I just decided that rather than me buying it, I would instead start giving them a modest allowance, and then they could buy their own treat at the gas station and they could make that decision. So I no longer sort of do these impulse spending on them because I've given them their own money. In the end, it's the same amount of money I would have been spending anyway, but now I'm transferring the ownership to them so they can make the decision. And it is wild how all of a sudden when it's their money, sometimes they don't want the stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, isn't that interesting?" Like, if I'm not gonna buy the treat at the gas station, then they don't want the treat anymore. So, it's been kind of
Mhm.
amazing to see them start to learn about money and what's worth it to them once it was their quote unquote "own money" to spend.
Mhm. And I think it's really important when you're getting this started to choose what am I not going to pay for anymore? What are the wants
Mhm.
or what however you want to define it that are now their responsibility? And it really kind
Mhm.
of eliminates those fights at the grocery store, you know? It's that's the same thing I've seen. They kind of go away after that because now they get to make their own choices about that. And that's really empowering for them.
Mhm. Sometimes now I'll also split things with them. Like I'll say, like their
Mhm.
Halloween costume. I don't want them to have to pay for their own Halloween costume, but also they want these lavish Halloween costumes. So I'll say, "Okay, well
Mhm.
we can get the blow up T-Rex that's 75 bucks. I'll split it with you." And they're like, "No, I don't want to spend 30 plus dollars of my own money on that." I'm like, "Well, then why should I spend 75?" So there you
Yeah.
go. Because I offered to split it with them, they're making a decision that's a better decision financially for them. And it works out to all of our benefit.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say when you're choosing how much to pay, I think a good rule of thumb is to pay them enough that it forces them to save for things that they want, but in
Mm,
a reasonable amount of time.
hmm
Like I remember we once we had gotten started, we've gone through so many iterations of what allowance looks
hmm
like. And when we were going along, my daughter decided that she wanted some rollerblades. And we said, okay, let's go look up and see how much they cost, and you can start saving for it. And we looked it up and realized that it would take her about 8 months to be able to pay for
mm,
these. This is not teaching her the value of saving. You know, she's going to lose
hmm
interest way before she has enough money to do so. So that was
hmm
kind of an opportunity for us to say, okay, we need to make some adjustments here and figure out, what is practical for them to be learning the lessons that we want them to learn.
hmm That's really powerful.
One other thing that I want to say about this is to let your kids make mistakes and don't bail
Mm.
them out because they're going to buy dumb things that you completely disagree with. And it's better for them to learn these lessons when the stakes are low.
hmm
I remember once my daughter, my kids are varying levels. You can already see this one's the impulse buyer, this one's the saver. These habits are already coming out. And I have one of my daughters wanted to buy lunch at school, and that's something that we make them pay for. And she just didn't feel like making her lunch that day. So she went and bought lunch at school, and she came home and said, Mom, tomorrow is cinnamon roll day at lunch. And that's her favorite day of the year. And so we went and we looked in her ledger. We make him keep a ledger. And she didn't have enough money to buy a cinnamon roll. And this was devastating for her. And, please, Mom, can you just loan me a little money? I'll pay you back. But this is the whole point of the exercise. These are the lessons that we want them to learn. And it's so hard.
As a mom, you're like, I just want to give her a couple bucks. She loves the cinnamon roll day. But then you're
Yeah.
taking away
Oh,
the
it's
lesson.
cinnamon roll day. Yes, I would much rather she learn it when she can't buy a cinnamon roll than when she can't pay rent because she went out to a movie. Just this is the whole point.
Yeah.
So one other thing I want to say for this is if you're hearing all of this and it just seems overwhelming, just start small, figure out the basic framework of what you think you want it to be and just start. And if it doesn't work, then you can make tweaks. And, as you are ready for more and as your kids are ready for more, then you can adjust it. But it doesn't have to be perfect to start.
Oh, so important that you mentioned that. It was just last summer that we finally instituted a pretty solid money system in our family. And my kids are 12 and 9, so it felt a little late. But I think I had overthought this for so long. And finally I was like, we're just gonna start. We're just gonna pick something, we're gonna try it. And I told the kids, like, this might change. The amount you're getting, the rules around, like, it might all change, but we're gonna start. We're gonna try something. And we got green light cards, which are like kids' debit. Well, I think you can only get a debit card after age 12 at like a regular bank, I'm pretty sure. But this is like
So.
younger kids can get them. And it has a really easy app that I can like transfer money in and out for them. They can take their card and like take it to the gas station if they want that treat and they feel really grown up using their card. It's worked great for us. And we just started with a simple $10 a week. $5 goes into savings. Well, 4, I guess, goes into savings because $1, 10% goes into giving, like charity, and then $5 for spending. Because another thing is that I wanted them to learn how to be responsible for mistakes that they made. Like if they broke something, I'd say, well, you need to pay for that. And they'd say, like, with what money? And so now that they have this system set up, the savings money is that. So I never let them use that unless it's like for something that they're replacing or like a bigger expense that they've actually been saving for a long time. And it's totally worked out. I'm surprised. It was just very simple. Every family is going to have different like levels of comfort on how much, but that was a good starting place for us. So Abby, I mentioned that we like the green light card. What do you use? I know people are wondering in your home, do you give them cash? You mentioned a ledger? Like tell us more about that whole system.
Okay, so we do give our kids cash because I think my kids are younger. There's one that's 5 who's getting allowance, and my oldest is 9. And so I think it's really important, especially when they're younger, for them to have that tangible experience of here's $5 and I spent 3 and this is what $2 looks like, Because I think it's so easy even for grown-ups to just, oh, I spent $20 and I never saw it. So it doesn't really, I don't feel it.
Yes.
So I feel like that's teaching them at a level that they can understand and that they can recognize. So we picked a day. Our day is Saturday. So every Saturday, they all have these little piggy banks that have 3 different parts. There's a spend and a save and a share. And they bring down their piggy bank and they bring down their ledger. And each kid gets $1 per year of age each week. And they need to know how to break it down. Okay, so you're 8, so you get $4 to spend. We use the same ratios as you. You get $4 to spend, you get $3.20 to put into savings, and you're putting 80 cents into sharing. And they grab their ledger and they have to do all the math and figure it out. And with my 5-year-old, it'll be more like, okay, here's 10 dimes, and what is a dime? How much is a dime? And I'll teach him differently since we can't necessarily fill out that ledger yet. And then once they're done, they've been paid. And whenever they want to spend money, they go grab their ledger and we do the math on that so that we're always, I'm trying to teach them this is what it's actually like to keep a budget, we're going through
To
those
balance.
steps. And also we want to encourage them to save. So for us, we pay them interest on their savings. We pay them
Mm.
10% interest on whatever's in their savings account every month.
And I haven't done that yet, but that's a fun thing to think about adding.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You can just keep on tweaking and changing as you go. So for us, that's what we do. But after a while, our kids' savings is getting bigger and bigger because for us, the savings is long term. Like you don't touch
Mhm.
this money, you'll spend it
Mhm.
when you're older. And we got to a point where we're like, this is a bigger expense than we want to make every month just to pay them interest. So we decided that once we hit a certain dollar amount, they could start investing it. And this tracks in the
Ooh.
real world because you don't get interest on your investments. It's different kind of money you're getting. You're getting, capital gains and things like that. Then we could start teaching them about stock. And, this is what stock is and what companies are you interested in? Do you want to buy a share of
Wow.
it? And so now we're into the next level where our kids are learning about the stock market and investing and things like that. And
Oh,
so
that's so cool.
we didn't know when we started that that's where we were going to go. But as needs have arisen, we've been able to make
I
changes.
love that. And there's a fairly new account on Instagram called Jolly Good Dollar.
Mm-hmm.
It's my friend Jansen. It's
Wow.
her and her husband running it, and it has a lot of really good tips for simple ways to start your kids learning about money, but also learning about investing and things like that. So if that feels overwhelming to you, you might want to check out Jolly Good Dollar. And also just remember what Abby said, just start. Keep it simple. Our family finance system has ended up being not very much work for me. And that is important if I'm going to maintain anything long term. And so actually with Greenlight, it just
Yeah.
automatically goes into their different accounts. So I don't even have to remember to do that every week, which
So
is
great.
probably taking a step out of the learning for sure. But it's better than nothing that we
But
have the
it's working.
system,
Yeah.
they know the basics, and we can build on it from there. So I love, love, love these
Yeah.
tips. And what's your third takeaway for us?
Third takeaway is to talk about money to your kids and in front of your kids. So you want to demystify this topic. Kids don't know that money is supposed to be taboo. We teach them that. And we
Mm,
can normalize it by just talking about it in little drips, just here and there. The more you can bring it in an age appropriate way, the more they'll look at money as what it is. It's a tool. They don't need all the emotional baggage behind it. So think about all the money transactions that you do when your kids aren't looking. There are bills that you pay online, or think about the ones that you do right in front of them that they don't even realize because there's no cash. You can narrate this stuff. So let's say you're at the grocery store. You can say, hey, I'm using my debit card right now to buy this milk and it costs $2.75. And the money is going to zip from my bank account through this card to the grocery store's bank account so they can get paid. Isn't that cool? Just, say it out loud. Say what's happening so that they know, oh, money is being exchanged right now.
mm-hmm.
Or like as you have thoughts, like you could be wandering the store and being like, oh, milk is expensive right now. We're going to go with the generic brand. Or, when you're going to work, be like, I'm going to work and my boss is going to pay me money for the time that I work.
Yeah.
And I want to say too, this can be really intimidating because if you're having a lot of feelings about the way money was handled in your house growing up or things like that, there might be some stuff to unpack. There might be some
Mm.
feelings that you need to work through to make sure that the image of money that you're portraying to your kids is the one that you want them to learn.
Mm.
There are topics like this where you want kids, if they have a question about it, you want them to feel comfortable coming to you. And if you don't know where to start, there's a lot of books that, kid
Mm.
books that you can read about it, or like adult books if you want to just educate yourself so that you can know the words to say, or you can let the book say the words for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some good ones if anybody needs.
Yeah.
Um,
Why don't you give me a list of books and I'll put it in the show notes for people so that they can go check
okay,
out some of
I will
those
do that.
books. I wanted to ask Abby, what do you do? I think a common question that kids ask that I don't know if I should answer is how much money do you make? How much money do we have? Questions like that. Is it appropriate to
Hmm.
answer those? Or do you tell kids though we don't ask that? How do you deal with stuff like that?
I'm all in favor of giving kids as much information as I feel like they can handle. Um, what I like to do with questions like that is to give it context. Because you could say, oh, this is our salary, and they have no idea what that means, but it's going to sound like a giant number, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a book that I love. It's called The Opposite of Spoiled by Ron Lieber.
Mm.
It's highly recommend. Anyway, one thing he talks about that a father did with his kids when they started asking these questions is he went to the bank and he got like his monthly salary in cash. And he brought it home and he laid it out and he said, okay, kids, this is how much money I make this month. This much goes to taxes. This much pays rent. This much pays utilities. And he just broke it all down so that they could see, this is the money that I make, but this is what we actually have to play with.
Mm.
So I feel like things like that, where it's like, okay, let me give you, and that's going to depend on the age of your kids and what you think, they can absorb. But I think just giving them context to a question like that is always better than just leaving them in the dark, because again, they're thinking, oh, okay, that's something I can't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But also, when those questions come up, I think it's good to say, oh, well, why are you wondering? Because
Mm-hmm.
you might take it in a direction thinking like, oh, they've started to notice that their neighbors have more than them, and it might have nothing to do with what you're thinking. I think it's really important to try to anticipate these questions that your kids could ask and think
Mm.
about, how would I answer that if my kid came up to me and said, Mom, are we poor? Like, think about how you might answer those questions in a way that they can handle at their age. And you might want to practice it in front of a mirror. And if you don't know, then you might want to go read up on, how did other people answer this? Or what do I need to know more about this? And if you need, think about, what is the answer that I'll give when I don't have an answer right now, but I don't want to shut them down? You know, it might be like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that is a really good question. I want to make sure I give you a good answer. This is so important. Let me think about this and come back to you, you know,
Mm.
and then come back to them. Make sure you don't just drop it. Like, you want this to be an open subject that is not awkward with your kids.
Mm. Love it. So good. These takeaways are so helpful. They feel so doable, something that moms can start today. I'm excited because I feel like during summer break, I have a little bit more margin in my life, and like my kids have a little bit more time for us to do some of this deliberate teaching and talking and educating. And I'm just so grateful that you found 3 and 30, that you took Sam, that you reached out to me and asked about helping out with the finances for Sam. It's been an incredible blessing to my life. And I'm so glad that you are here sharing your takeaways with 3 and 30.
I just am so glad that I get to be doing this thing that I love. So thanks.
I loved that conversation full of practical takeaways. And as a reminder, these are Abby's 3 tips for teaching kids about money. Number 1, keep it fun. You want to combine money with play to build familiarity and give kids a positive association. Keep things light and positive as your kids are first being introduced to money. Second, let them learn by doing, or in other words, pay your kids allowance so they actually have some money to start learning with. This will look different for everyone depending on your situation, your money knowledge, and your personal and family values. But remember that money is the tool kids need to learn to use money. And third and finally, talk about money with your kids so the topic will become demystified and shame-free. Talk through your money transactions as they happen, read books with them about money topics, and if they ask questions, don't dodge them. You'll be doing your children a huge service if you make sure that money is not an awkward topic in your home. Perhaps my favorite takeaway that Abby mentioned in this episode is to just start. Don't overthink this. Come up with a simple system and get going. You can always tweak or add to it or change it later. And as I mentioned in the episode, our family has really loved the ease of the Greenlight app for our kids. I think it's perfect for ages 8 and up. And actually, since this episode was recorded, Greenlight has become a sponsor of 3 and 30. And I am so thrilled because this is an app and debit card that I genuinely love using with my kids. You can go to greenlight.com/3and30 to get your first month free. That's greenlight.com/3and30. And I also wanted to remind you that you can get a list of Abby's favorite books and podcasts to teach children about financial literacy and responsibility by going to 3and30podcast.com/money. I'll link that in the show notes, and I hope it will be a super helpful resource for you. My friends, I am rooting for you. I hope this topic doesn't weigh on you as one more thing you, quote, should teach your kids, but instead feels doable and exciting as you figure out simple ways to work in more money management discussions with your family. You've got this, and I hope you have a beautiful week with your family.